Good morning. I call this session of the Public Service Commission to order. Madam Secretary, are there any changes to the final agenda?
There are no changes to the final agenda.
Thank you. Before moving to the agenda, I'd like to conduct a roll call of commissioners. When I call your name, please confirm that you are present. Commissioner Diane Berman,
Here.
Commissioner James Alisi,
Here.
Commissioner John Howard,
Here.
Commissioner Dave Valesky,
Here.
Commissioner John Majori.
Here.
Thank you. Now, before we go to the regular agenda, do any commissioners wish to recuse from voting on either item 201 or 401? Commissioner Berman?
I'll be voting on both.
Thank you. Commissioner Alisi?
No, I'll participate fully.
Would you be so kind as to say that again, closer to the mic?
No.
Thank you. Commissioner Howard?
No.
Commissioner Valesky?
No recusals.
Commissioner Majori?
Nope.
Thank you. We'll now move to the regular agenda. Our first item for discussion, item 201, case 23-M-0298, and case 14-M-0565, as it relates to appropriations to enhance energy affordability programs. It'll be presented today by Eric Ryder. We'll also have Richard Berkeley, Alicia Sullivan, Tom Dwyer, Mike Suma for questions. Eric, please begin.
Can you hear me? Good?
Yes.
Okay. Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. Item 201 is a draft order recommending the Commission adopt a utility-specific one-time energy bill credit using $200 million in funds appropriated in the 2023-2024 New York State budget. The one-time energy bill credit is simple to administer, will be applied to customer accounts automatically, and requires no action by customers. The purpose of the relief to electric and gas utility customers is to partially offset the costs of the utility affordability programs in recognition of recent upward pressure on utility bills. The draft order estimates that the relief will accrue to the benefit of more than 8 million customers statewide. The draft order also recommends the Commission direct Central Hudson Gas and Electric Corporation, or Central Hudson, the Brooklyn Union Gas Company, DBA National Grid New York, or KEDNY, New York State Electric and Gas Corporation, or NYSEG, and Rochester Gas and Electric Corporation, or RG&E, to each file a report with the Secretary to the Commission within 90 days of the effective date of the order. The purpose of directing these utilities to each file a report is to address updates made to their utility-specific energy affordability program, or EAP, expenditure amounts. The reports are necessary to fully identify the impact of errors discovered with their reported EAP expenditures. I will next explain the 2023-2024 state budget appropriation, a staff proposal, a proposal made by the Public Utility Law Project of New York, or PULP, and then a report filed by the EAP Working Group. The 2023-2024 state budget included directives regarding 3 separate programs. First, it required the Department of Public Service, or Department, to utilize a $200 million appropriation for the purpose of providing assistance to utility customers related to the cost of utility affordability programs authorized by the Public Service Commission and administered by the Department in consultation with the Energy Affordability Policy Working Group. The amounts appropriated by the state budget may be dispersed to the utilities, including the Long Island Power Authority, or LIPA, on behalf of utility customers as determined by the Department based on their share of energy affordability policy program expenditures during calendar year 2022. Second, it directed the department to establish a new expanded discount program to provide utility bill relief to utility customers, in consultation with the Energy Affordability Policy Working Group, for residential customers that do not currently qualify for the Energy Affordability Policy Program, but whose income is below the state median income. Third, it directed the department to establish a program to provide an energy affordability guarantee to participating residential customers in the Empower Plus program administered by the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority, who electrify their homes in accordance with the program standards required by the authority. This draft order before you today addresses the first program, providing relief to customers. Recommendations to establish the additional two programs required in the state budget are being developed, and recommendations will be brought to the Commission at a future session. On June 5th, 2023, the Secretary to the Commission issued a notice scheduling EAP working group meetings, stating that the working group would be turning its focus to addressing the fiscal year 23-24 state budget funds. The notice encouraged all interested entities to attend and actively participate in the working group's upcoming meetings. On August 21st, 2023, Department staff filed a proposal that I will refer to as the staff proposal in these cases to establish how the utilities in LIPA, who are utilities responsible for administering the state's energy affordability program, would use the budget funds to meet the purpose of the appropriation. The staff proposal recommended that each of the utilities, 1, receive an allocation of the budget funds based on its share of statewide calendar year 2022 EAP expenditures, 2, allocate its share of the budget funds to each of the utility service classes similar to how EAP expenses are recovered from customers, and 3, distribute the bill credits volumetrically to customers over a term of 6 months. Additionally, the staff proposal recommended a final report on the status of execution of the bill relief to customers to ensure the implementation of the CERC credits is both transparent and adequately documented. After staff issued its proposal on September 11, 2023, Pulp submitted a responsive proposal recommended the budget funds be dispersed to residential utility customers only via a non-volumetric based equal CERC credit to all residential eligible customers. The staff proposal, the Pulp proposal, and a few other proposals were considered over the course of several working group meetings, which resulted in the working group developing an energy bill credit report. The bill credit report was filed on November 21st, 2023. The bill credit report states that the working group generally agrees with staff's approach to allocate the $200 million to the utilities in LIPA and also reflects pertinent parts of the Pulp proposal. However, the consensus of the working group recommends different timing for application of the credit to be placed on customers' accounts than what staff proposed. The bill credit report recommends the Commission implement a New York State energy bill credit that includes the following. 1. The utilities, including LIPA, would receive an allocation of the $200 million budget funds based on their share of statewide calendar year 2022 EAP expenditures for electric and/or gas service. I'll note here that staff verified the calendar year 2022 EAP expenditures to the utilities' general ledgers. 2. Each of the utilities would divide the budget funds allocated by the total number of customers in each service, electric or gas, that pay into EAP to develop a one-time credit that would be applied to customers' accounts within 45 days of receiving the budget funds. I'll note here that the impact of this recommendation is that more relief is targeted to residential customers. And 3, utilities would each file reports in case 23M0298 within 60 days of applying the final credit to customer accounts. The consensus of the working group was that a one-time bill credit is simple to message and provides meaningful relief to customers at a time when winter bills are coming due. The bill credit report also included an alternative proposal from LIPA for customers in its service territory only, under which LIPA would use its existing revenue decoupling mechanism to credit customers over the course of calendar year 2024. LIPA states that its proposal would eliminate its need to incur incremental costs on billing system changes, which is different than the other utilities. Public Service Electric and Gas Long Island, or PSEG Long Island, would incur incremental administrative costs to implement the one-time bill credit proposed by the working group, and LIPA is contractually obligated to pay PSEG Long Island for those incremental costs. LIPA states its proposal would enable it to directly assist customers at zero administrative cost for implementation. The utilities reported that any potential cost to implement the one-time credits would be addressed within their existing operating budgets and existing personnel, and the structured relief should not result in any incremental administrative expenses to be borne by customers. The working group evaluated whether providing customers with bill credits would have any impact on the utilities' uncollectible expenses. The utilities indicated that the bill credits should have a small impact on arrears for certain customers, as the credit would be applied to prior balances first, but overall any impact on utilities' uncollectible expenses is expected to be de minimis. The working group recommends that the utilities apply the credits on customers' accounts no later than 45 days after receiving the budget funds. After application of all credits, the utilities would file reports with the Secretary to the Commission within 60 days of applying the last credit to customer accounts. The bill credit reports state that LIPA's reporting process would be different from the utilities to match its alternative approach. Staff, the joint utilities, PULP, the New York State Department of State Utility Intervention Unit, and, specific to LIPA's proposal, the Long Island Progressive Coalition support the recommendations in the bill credit report. The City of New York stated that it is supportive of the working group recommendations included in the bill credit report, except with respect to 2 issues. First, the City of New York proposes that the relief be provided to residential customers only, as PULP initially proposed. Second, the City of New York recommends differentiating natural gas heating customers from natural gas cooking only customers for the purpose of allocating the budget funding. AARP continues to believe a better use of the money is to target moderate income utility customers. Turning now to outreach and education, the bill credit report states that the joint utilities, the department, and stakeholders have a plan to execute an outreach plan for the energy bill credit as soon as the Commission issues an order. Next, I'll discuss the supplemental filings made by NYSEG, RG&E, Central Hudson, and KEDNY. After the bill credit report was filed, NYSEG and RG&E, Central Hudson, and KEDNY contacted staff and explained that their calendar year 2022 EAP expenditures, as reported on their general ledgers and contained in the energy bill credit report, were incorrect, and if the expenditure amounts were applied on the errors could have a material impact on the allocation of the $200 million appropriation. Each utility filed a supplement in the case and provided estimates of the corrected calendar year 2022 EAP expenditures. These utilities recommended the Commission use the estimates in place of the 2022 EAP expenditures included in the energy bill credit report for purposes of allocating the $200 million budget appropriation. The draft order considers the staff proposal, the working group's bill credit report, and stakeholder comments, and recommends the Commission adopt the recommendations in the staff proposal with modifications as presented in the Energy Bill Credit Report to provide a one-time credit to customers. The relief will be immediate and automatic for all utility customers that pay into utilities and LIPA's energy affordability programs. Now we'll turn to some of the specific recommendations in the draft order, such as allocation of the budget funds and addressing the supplemental filings. The draft order recommends the Commission allocate the $200 million budget funds to each of the utilities in LIPA based on their share of statewide calendar year 2022 EAP expenditures, because the method is consistent with the language accompanying the $200 million appropriation included in the state budget. However, as noted, 4 utilities discovered errors with their reported calendar year 2022 EAP expenditures that caused staff to take additional steps beyond verifying the expenditures to utilities' general ledgers to determine if the data provided was reasonable for the purpose of making the required utility allocations. Staff examined each entity staff examined whether each entity billed correct EAP discount rates and coded EAP customers in the correct EAP tier. Staff also obtained officer certifications attesting to the accuracy of the data provided. Staff deemed these certifications necessary to ensure a high-level review at each of the companies. The draft order recommends the estimates provided by NYSEG, RG&E, Central Hudson, and KEDNY are reasonable for the purpose of making the required allocations to each utility and LIPA associated with the $200 million appropriation. However, based on the errors made and the technical nature of the recalculating of the 2022 EAP expenditures, a subsequent process is necessary to undertake an additional review to further assess the information provided by the utilities. Any discrepancies found in the context of this additional review may result in a reconciliation of the allocations across the utilities and LIPA. To that end, the draft order recommends NYSEG, RG&E, Central Hudson, and KEDNY each be required to, within 90 days of the effective date of this order, to make a filing with the Secretary to the Commission that explains the actual impact of the identified errors and provides an accurate EAP expenditure amount for calendar year 2022, and to investigate if customers were financially impacted. The draft order recommends the Commission leaves open the possibility of another order and/or further process to address any discrepancies resulting from the review required here. The draft order also acknowledges the contract agreements made by NYSEG, RG&E, Central Hudson, and KEDNY for the disbursement of the budget funds contain a specific provision to remedy errors with their reported calendar year 2022 EAP expenditures for the purposes of allocating the $200 million budget funds using shareholder funds only. The draft order also considered the bill credit report's analysis of current and past customers' arrears as an important factor to consider in providing bill relief, as arrears data is one measure of energy affordability. The arrears data generally indicates that both residential and non-residential customers need assistance. The draft order acknowledges that targeting more of the one-time bill credit to low-income customers isn't supported by the arrears data and minimizes the relief to non-low-income residential customers or moderate-income residential customers not eligible for bill assistance. The arrears data also demonstrates that non-residential customers, most of which the bill credit report indicates are small commercial customers, are also in need of relief. The draft order states that providing an equal credit to all customers in a utility service territory specific to electric and gas service strikes the right balance between providing more relief to residential customers and providing some relief to small commercial customers. The draft order addresses the City of New York's recommendation to design a residential bill credit that produces the same percentage benefit to residential gas cooking only and residential gas heating customers by explaining it is not a statewide issue. The modification would require programming changes and complicate the messaging to customers for little benefit beyond Con Edison and Kedney's customers. New York City residential cooking only customers likely have heating costs included in rent, and therefore a fixed benefit to all customers will assist all customers in their energy costs. The draft order therefore recommends the same one-time credit be applied to all customers in a service territory specific to electric and gas service to offset a portion of the Energy Affordability Program costs. To that point, as shown in the appendix of the draft order, the calendar year 2022 EAP expenditures were $345 million. And the $200 million budget funds offset approximately 58% of the EAP program costs in this period. Moreover, the automatic one-time bill credit is efficient and least administratively burdensome, is simple to message, and allows relief to reach customers as quickly and cost-effectively as possible, and it comes at a time when winter bills are coming due. The draft order recognizes that a small reconciliation is expected and recommends using the existing EAP reconciliation mechanism to minimize administrative costs. Regarding LIPA's proposal to pass back its share of the $200 million budget funds through its low-income discount and existing revenue recoupling mechanism, the draft order recommends the department's Long Island staff thoroughly review the monthly tracking and financial reports to ensure that LIPA's share of the budget appropriation has been entirely provided to customers and that the energy bill credit did not have an impact on LIPA's revenue decoupling mechanism. The draft order recommends the Commission direct each of the utilities to file a report within 60 days of applying the last credit to customers' accounts. The report shall contain the amount of the budget funds allocated to the utility, the number of customers receiving the energy bill credits, and the total amount of credits applied to accounts, and identify any residual amounts that have been deferred to an EAP deferral account. In addition, the report also include the actual accounting entries recorded by the utilities to account for the energy bill credit. Staff has informed the Commission that the EAP working group has had multiple coordination meetings to create common, plain language messaging and use multiple outreach and education channels, including but not limited to bill messages, social media, and posting on individual websites. The plans are ready to be implemented by the utilities and stakeholders. The draft order recommends the Commission approve the outreach and education plan. In conclusion, the draft order recommends the Commission adopt the recommendations in the staff proposal with modifications as recommended in the working group's bill credit report to distribute the $200 million budget funds based on the utilities and LIPA's share of statewide calendar year 2022 EAP expenditures. The purpose of the relief is to electric and gas utility customers is to partially offset the costs of the utility affordability programs in recognition of recent upward pressure on utility bills. The credit will be applied to customers' accounts within 45 days of receiving the budget funds, with the program structured for more relief to residential customers and providing some relief to small commercial customers. That concludes my presentation, and staff is available for questions.
Thank you, Eric. I have to say I appreciate the level of detail you provided today. in highlighting how we got from there to here. And I think that's sometimes lost in some of the actions we take. And I really want to thank you for highlighting all the various steps in the process from start to finish. I think many people think of our actions just as what happens here on session day. But I think in articulating the various steps, you've shown the level of engagement we've had both with utilities, various stakeholders, and through the EAP working group, and the importance of that engagement in identifying the right outcome that can be timely and meaningful for the individuals involved. So I really want to commend you. I want to commend the staff involved, everybody here today, the EAP working group, the utilities. Thank you for working so diligently to bring this before us today. And I think in looking at this order and looking at the Commission's mandate that we provide affordable, safe, secure, and reliable service, I see this as a prime example of us working towards that initial mandate, that affordability, ensuring that we can provide the means through which to deliver support and relief to our customers. And I see that in this order as one of its prime goals and of significant importance. Every year we have hundreds of cases coming before us, each of them unique in their own way, each of them impacting either an individual utility, collection of utilities, municipalities, or customers directly. And again, all of these actions are with the goal of maintaining our mandate. And each of them are of fundamental importance to maintaining the well-being of New Yorkers. And I think this particular order is among them in its priority and its significance. We're dispersing $200 million today. That's probably what's going to be highlighted in the press. But we're also setting up processes and actions to bring us further along our path of achieving affordability for many New Yorkers, both those in need and those to come who are not yet in need. And I think it's important because this highlights the thoughtfulness of the steps taken in the stewardship of our duties to New Yorkers. The powers before the Commission that are granted to us, that we are allowed to move forward with, they're important, and they affect everyone in many, many ways. They affect livelihoods, they affect businesses. And again, this order does an amazing job of articulating how detailed we are in finding the right way forward. So I appreciate your efforts. I think this is in the public interest, and I thank you for your hard work in getting us here. Commissioner Berman.
Thank you very much, Chair. I want to take a moment to sort of recognize that energy affordability is a critical issue that we all grapple with and continue to grapple with. It's not lost on me that many folks have been a part of this process in trying to get it right, in looking at how to address the issues. Historically, we have really gotten under the hood numerous times on energy affordability, the programs that the utilities were doing, and trying to constantly and consistently evolve in a way that is helpful. The legislature has, in its intent to help, has given us this opportunity to work with the various stakeholders to try to come up with something that we hopefully can get right and look at how we can address one small aspect of the energy affordability issue. It is not lost on me, though, that the issues around energy affordability are much deeper than a pot of money. And in this case, while, significant, it's also a drop in the bucket for the larger energy affordability issues that are there. Energy affordability is in the eye of the beholder, too. Really is about, how do we define energy affordability for households, within the households, the income levels or the different pressures outside of just paying the utility bill. There are other significant pressures, and it's really about what are the hardships. What are the hardships to the others who wind up having to be a part of the costs that come from the energy affordability bills that are there that they themselves can't take advantage of. To the extent that as we move forward, it's not just about energy affordability today, but it's about energy affordability tomorrow. It's about looking and forecasting what that will look like. COVID showed us situations can happen that put in incredible pressure that, are unforeseen. But to the extent that there are some foreseen pressures that will come, the more utility investment that needs to be done, the more costly it will be, and the more we have to look at the backlash from that in terms of the cost to the ratepayers. And then we also have to look at, to the extent that it comes, the pot of money comes from the legislature outside of the rate-paying perspective, what does that do to fully make sure that we're aligned, but also not just moving it from ratepayers to taxpayers, and then also making sure that what the legislation that may come is actually helping us move forward, even if it's well-intended. In my mind, as I see it, it's a no-brainer that we are moving forward on the pot of money that we have now and figuring it out. But it does mean that we have to look at what have we learned from this process? What's the value that we've learned from this process? Because I am sure that there are lessons to be learned, positive and negative, within that process. I think it requires us to really be transparent about engaging from those who are on the outside, who might see some possibility of what it looks like to them, but then for those who are really on the ground level, and especially the working group members who not only did they work with staff in truly trying to do the right thing, but then they also still had their own challenges or own perspective of where it may not be just quite good enough. And I think that's something that we can learn from, but we have to do it in a much in a significant, transparent way so that we, as the Commission as a whole, who will be addressing energy affordability on many different fronts, can really learn from. Keeping in mind also that there is this division that needs to happen, or a division that needs to be talked about between residential households and businesses. And the impact on businesses cannot be lost on us because it is really an economic engine that we need to be addressing. And to the extent that energy affordability and those issues look different, just like for residences and the makeup of each residence and the area and all different things, it looks different for different businesses as well. And we need to recognize that and have some, I think, fruitful conversation on addressing energy affordability and the continuing evolution of what that looks like. For me, I have some concerns about the order itself. It is not that it is a problematic order. It's not. I think it's really trying to hit upon a lot of the different issues. The concern I have relates to the fact that we are not having closure on many of these issues. In fact, the order itself addresses the fact that we're addressing the first part of the program, providing relief to customers. But then there are two other aspects of the program that were within the budget that needs to get looked at, and we will, in the order, we are acknowledging in the body of the order that these two programs required in the state budget are being developed, and recommendations will be brought to the Commission at a future session. I think we really need to have more light on what exactly we are going to be developing in a way in the timetable for when it may come back to the Commission as a whole. There's no ordering clause that actually defines sort of those next steps, and I think that's something that is really important, that it doesn't just get lost in the ethers after this session today. Really making sure that it is laser focused on the two other programs that need to get developed, how we're doing it, and then when it may come back to the commission, and what the process is for those who may want to get involved, but also the process as it relates to other energy affordability issues. Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes sense to me.
Okay. The other aspect of the order that leaves me just feeling a need to at least address openly is that we have in here what I call sort of, and it's appropriate, but we have in here a recognition that additional staff analysis to address the accuracy of the EAP expenditures is necessary. And in fact, we leave open the possibility that we may need to come back with further processes or further orders to address the discrepancies resulting from the review and this analysis. I can't imagine that this is the only thing where we have programmatic errors, right? Just the nature of when you're working with a large volume of different pots of money and figuring out how to move forward and how it's getting calculated. And there are many different sort of eyes on things, but sometimes we lose sight of the fact that we need to take sort of a deep breath in looking at, okay, we are seeing in real time an issue in terms of how these program errors are coming into fruition and what perhaps needs to be done to take a look at the way we can in our proper oversight role, but also where else do we see that? You know, what else can we learn from that? The utilities aren't the only ones that have pots of money that deal with, you know, energy affordability and other things. And to the extent that we are drawing upon this knowledge and saying, okay, what is it that we need to do so that it doesn't come really to the session with an order that is still having possibility of needing to make course corrections in the review process of the accounting. Does that make sense?
It does. You know, in this order, we're trying to strike the right balance between providing relief to customers at a time when bills are likely to be higher and setting out a process to, you know, work through the problems the utilities had and come up with the correct answer and, you know, come up with the next steps to address any issues that the utilities uncover. Staff has to then verify them, and you know, we'll have to. Hopefully, there's the utilities got it right in this exercise, but staff just needs time to verify.
Okay, thank you. One of the issues I think that is also sort of lingering for me is the connection to our evaluation of what LIPA may or may not be doing and how that relates to the other utilities. And there's sort of an apples to orange comparison. You know, there's a variety of reasons why LIPA may need to do it a little differently. But one of the challenges that I have from my role as an oversight of all of these is that needing to make sure that we are fully evaluating and fully engaged in what everyone is doing, even if we don't have direct oversight over an entity. And to the extent that this is important for us not to just sort of leave to others to deal with as it relates to LIPA, but to really make sure that it is, you know, a part of and collaborative with not just the Long Island staff, but with the staff here. And so while I recognize there is some division of work there, I do want to make sure that we are not siloed in our processes or leaving to others to fix what might actually be helpful to us to have more of a hands-on approach with. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I would say LIPA was and PSEG Long Island were fully engaged in the EAP working group process, along with our Long Island DPS staff. So I think the work in the working group was collaborative, and on the staff side, I think we also are coordinated among the offices.
Okay, great. I'm happy to hear that. And then just really, I just think that, as we look at this, the intent of the program was really to help sort of offset the costs that are there. Can you explain a little bit about what you see in terms of that intent and how it may be helpful or not?
Sure. If you look at the appropriation language, the purpose and intent of the language is to offset the EAP expenditures, and that's really the question that the EAP working group had to grapple with, is how to do that. And the working group felt that it was best to allocate the cost a little bit more to residential customers, and came up with a method to take the total allocated amount and divide it by the number of customers. And essentially that's what the recommendation does, is provide a little bit more to residential customers with some benefit to small commercial customers.
Okay, thanks. I guess I also look at it, it's not for me to sort of step into the shoes of playing Monday night quarterback in terms of whether or not we should give a little bit more over here or a little bit less there. I recognize sort of the work through that. But as we move forward, I think there's, at least for me, a recognition that the program costs are only going to increase, and that we are not going to have sort of we're not going to be able to have a full match where the dollars that come fully address the challenges that are there, and that looking at the cost issue, here, I think there was a recognition that it was to get the dollars out, the one-time credit was important. But as we go forward, I also think one of the lessons to be drawn is that it took a long time from the legislation to get the dollars out, to get this order to get the dollars out, right? And so, and we're talking really about an average of $15 bill credit. And so I just worry that there needs to be a further look at, if this is now something that is going to be done and more sort of focus on energy affordability from the legislature, I want to make sure that it is not done in a way that we just become the ministerial check the box and moving the dollars, but that we actually are given the tools, we as the commission are given the tools to really fully evaluate the whole, and also what that may look like. It may not be that a one-time bill credit is appropriate as we go forward. It may not be that we, should have it take this long to do or do this way. We may need to have some more of an evolution of other ways that we can substantively address the issues that are more appropriate, and really also being more accountable in terms of the dollars and how they are actually being utilized to help. Does that make sense?
Yes, I just wanted to kind of frame the timetable, though. I mean, staff did work in the EAP working group as soon as the appropriation was approved. We did have to SAPA a proposal, so staff worked really quickly to get a proposal out, and there was a little bit of a delay on the back end because we discovered errors. But I do think the whole team, including the EAP working group, really worked diligently to get a recommendation to the commission as quickly as possible.
Yeah, and I just to clarify, I was not suggesting that
Okay.
there was a delay on staff's part at all. It's really more of a, what do we look like so that as we go forward, is it more appropriate to look at some other way of doing this in a way that is helpful? Is there tariff review? Is there something that we can do so that how we are handling it is really owned by us in our substantive roles versus just waiting for the budget to give us the dollars, and being much more fine-tuned with the substantive expertise that is here versus being dictated merely by the dollars that might be allocated. I appreciate really the forward thinking, but we also do need to look at the bigger whole of energy affordability, because I think that that's the real big elephant in the room. So, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Lisi?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be supporting the staff's recommendation. The department's report is thorough and extensive, and it reflects a significant amount of effort yielding fair and professional results. I want to thank
I'm
the
sorry,
staff for their
Commissioner
hard
Lisi.
work.
Would you mind moving a little closer to the mic? We're having a bit of hard time hearing you.
I'll be supporting the effort. Thank the staff for their professional job as usual. Thorough and extensive report yielding fair and professional results. I'll be voting yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Howard?
Thank you. I have a couple of questions. First of all, can you explain the source of the $340 million of the existing EAP program?
If you look at the appendix to the order, in calendar year 2022, in total statewide, the EAP expenditures were $345 million.
Right. I got how much it was. I want to know from whence it came. Was it all ratepayer funding?
Correct.
Okay, so we are now offsetting $200 million worth of ratepayer incurred expenses.
That's correct.
Great, thank you. I want to share Commissioner Berman's concern about the issue of the accountancy or the poor accountancy that we've uncovered. The question is, if not for this program implementation, when would we have found out that their accountancy was incorrect?
I don't know. I mean, one of the outcomes of this process is we did find errors, and we'll go through the process to determine if customers were harmed, and make corrections as necessary.
I guess the question becomes, how much of this comes up? This is a rate case issue. How much, would we find it in their next rate filing?
Well,
did we miss it in their last rate filing?
Commissioner, if I could perhaps,
Sure.
For the reporter Jeff Hogan, there's a real possibility that we would not have been aware of this if not for this issue. So what the companies were doing is they were calculating the amount of discount for customers. They were doing it incorrectly, and the amounts that they were booking into their accounts, onto what we call the general ledger, were based on that incorrect accounting. So in a rate case, when we go and look at the expenses and how much you're spending on an EAP program, and something you might see in that appendix that you were just referred to, it's based on the general ledger output. And that is not something we go further to look at in general, from a resource issue basically, to be able to dive into those numbers past the general ledger. So it's possible that if a mistake occurs and it's being reported in their financials, like reported to Wall Street, et cetera, those numbers can be incorrect, and sometimes you might not find it absent something like this occurring.
It gives me some pause. As Commissioner Berman done, this is just one of literally dozens of different programs and embedded cost to ratepayers. So
staff shares that pause and frustration at kind of the shifting sand of the numbers. Something, again, a preliminary review was done to determine what the problems were. We've identified the issues that these four companies had. There have been some preliminary talks about possible ways, as it was mentioned, that there are other things the commission could do. And we've had preliminary discussions about My Office of Accounting Audits and Finance has a management audit group, and we can do operational audits on things. Sometimes we've done multi-utility operational audits to investigate specific issues. In this case, it's not really an accounting issue as much as an internal controls, computer programming issue. Those are types of things that we could investigate.
Great, thank you. How is this going to appear on customers' bills? Will there be a line on everybody's bill that says, and an explanation of what it is?
Yes, there will be a specific line item on a customer bill with bill messaging explaining what the credit is. And the EAP working group has worked together to come up with common messaging statewide for everyone's use.
Great, and we will make it clear don't expect this every month.
Correct. It's a one-time bill credit.
Okay. Thank you. This really came in our 2022's, jump in energy prices is largely attributable to the spike in natural gas prices worldwide that had a cascading effect in New York and everywhere else. But as we go forward, the issue of energy affordability will still be subject to these worldwide blips in commodity pricing and the like, supply chain issues, a variety of things. But also, this will have to be done in conjunction with how decarbonization is paid for and how we recapitalize huge amounts of utility infrastructure, both owned by utilities and by suppliers. So the upward pressure on cost is not going away. It's already built into what we're planning vis-a-vis our decarbonization efforts. So I think that the issue of energy affordability just it will be part of our ongoing things, whether we pay attention to it or not. Customers are going to feel the increase. And while we are providing relief to all customers, many may see that this actual amount that customers get is somewhat anemic. I guess the message back to the legislature will be that $200 million doesn't go as far as it used to. But thank you for your hard work, and I will be supporting it.
Thank you. Commissioner Valesky.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Eric, thank you. Just a few questions for you. But first, I do want to just follow up to Jeff Hogan and what you had said. I would certainly hope that as you consider a series of errors that may have been found as a result of this program, that you do bring forward to us, whether it be of an audit nature or anything else, any potential resolutions that you think we ought to be considering, because that is somewhat troublesome. But for this program, we certainly, in all likelihood, would still not know of those errors. So if we could have that follow up at some point in the future, that would be very helpful and I think really important. Eric, thank you and your team for the work that you have done here. I was going to ask you about one of the issues that Commissioner Berman raised, and if you're not prepared to speak to it here at session, that's fine. But if we could going forward, so as you indicated early in your presentation, the budget language actually spoke to 3 separate programs, and this is obviously just one of those 3. So if we could at some point get a report or an update as to where we are in terms of following through with the second and third recommendations that were made by the legislature and governor in last year's budget, particularly since we're almost a year ahead of that point in time. I think that would really be important. We all know that the issue of affordability is not going to be lessening anytime soon, so I'd be very anxious to hear where we are with those 2 additional programs. The other 2 specific questions I have are actually just in terms of ratepayers. So I know that, assuming the order is approved today, that ratepayers can expect to see their one-time bill credit within 45 days of the utilities receiving the budget appropriation. And I understand we're not the division of the budget. However, do you have any sense, and I'm just trying to get, again, from the perspective of a ratepayer, whether they can expect to see a bill credit in May, in July, in October? Do we have any sense at all as to when the budget appropriations will actually be made and therefore triggering the 45-day clock?
So it's Bob Rosenthal. So let me just be clear. So the budget appropriation is to the Department of Public Service. That's been made already. The way the money is going to be transferred to the utility customers is through a contract with the utilities, between the utilities and DPS. That's how prior appropriation money was distributed to the utilities.
And that could be ballpark time frame?
It would be very soon after
Very
issuance.
soon. Okay. And then so if I am a ratepayer in Long Island, just correct me if I'm wrong in any of this. If I'm a ratepayer as a resident of Long Island, if I receive gas through KEDLI, I would receive a one-time bill credit for my gas service at some point in the relatively near future. On the electric side, I would receive my credit over the remaining months of calendar year 2024. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And in part of your educational process, you'll make that very clear to ratepayers, not only across the state, but because it's a bit of a different situation on Long Island, that'll be made clear to them, I assume, right?
They have specific messaging
Okay.
for their program, yes.
Okay, terrific. Okay. Thank you very much. I don't have any further questions and certainly plan on supporting the order. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Majori?
Thank you. So, Eric, I just have one question, which you actually already answered, both in the body of your remarks and also in response to one of Commissioner Howard's questions. But I'm going to ask it again anyway, just to underscore a point that I'm going to refer to in my comments, which is, can you repeat again the amount of the cost that this $200 million program is supposed to offset? In other words, the amount of the cost of the EAP program that this program is designed to partially offset?
Of course. I think the easiest reference is in the appendix to the order, where the 2022 calendar year EAP expenditures were $345 million. That of course has increased since that time, but it's a good point of reference.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for the overall presentation and all the detail that you put into it. The reason I think that's significant is that...
Sorry, Commissioner Majori. I'm so
Yeah.
sorry to interrupt. We're not hearing you all that clearly. You're coming in rather faint. Can you move the mic a little bit closer?
Okay, can you hear me better? Is this any better?
No, unfortunately, no.
Okay. I'm literally touching the mic. Any better?
Yeah. Why don't you
Okay.
continue? We'll see what we can do with the technical
All right.
challenges we're having.
Oh, okay. I'll abbreviate my remarks. I just do see a logic between the amount. There's a logic to the amount. It is more than 50%. It goes more than 50% towards offsetting a particular cost. And I'll just say that I'd like to applaud the legislature for passing this amount. Hopefully, we'll get more. But I think I would like to acknowledge that that this is an action that was designed to provide ratepayer relief, and that's a good thing. And I think we could applaud that. So, as Commissioner Berman indicated, it's not really our role to pick between different options, exactly how to slice up this $200 million or to design the program ourselves. It has gone through many hands before reaching us here today, but I'm satisfied that the proposal before us is consistent with the intent of the legislation, and I'm planning to support it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'll now do a call for a vote. My vote is in favor of the recommendation to approve the proposed implementation plan for financial assistance to utility customers with modifications as discussed. Commissioner Berman, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Alisi?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Howard?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Valesky?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Majori?
Yes.
Thank you. The item is approved and the recommendations are adopted. Thank you, staff. We'll now move to the second item for discussion today. Item 401, case 20-W-0477, case 22-W-0357, and case 24-W-0105, as it relates to the investigation into Hudson Valley Water Company's capability to provide safe and adequate service. It'll be presented today by Charles Coyer, Joshua Gonier, Timothy March, Mike Reeder, and Richard Berkeley are available for questions. And Charles, welcome. This is your first time.
Yes.
All right. Why don't you get started? Please begin.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. My name is Charles Coyer, and I'm an Assistant Counsel in the Office of General Counsel and Lead Attorney assigned to Item 401. Item 401 is a proposed order for your consideration directing Hudson Valley Water Companies Incorporated, which we will refer to as Hudson Valley, to show cause why the Commission should not appoint a temporary operator for Hudson Valley. The proposed order to show cause references and is based on a report prepared by department staff that we have provided to you but have not yet publicly released. We refer to this report as the 2024 staff report, and it details the initial phase of staff's ongoing investigation into Hudson Valley that commenced in December of 2023 after the department was notified of an arsenic filter system failure at Hudson Valley. The draft order before you would initiate a formal administrative process. The draft order would not be the final conclusion or verdict of the Commission. Similarly, the 2024 staff report represents staff's initial findings in an ongoing investigation. There has not yet been a hearing, and Hudson Valley has not yet been provided with an opportunity to respond to this. As such, staff reserves the ability to augment the 2024 staff report's findings, pending the receipt of additional information. Our next speaker, Tim Marsh, will provide an overview of Hudson Valley and the initial notice and information we received related to the arsenic filter system failure.
Tim, before you begin, you might want to change your name tag.
Thank you.
There you go.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. My name is Timothy Marsh. I am a Utility Analyst Trainee 2 in the Office of Consumer Services, and I am one of the lead staff assigned to Item 401. A little closer, thank you. Hudson Valley is a waterworks corporation that provides service to 434 customers through 5 non-contiguous systems in the Ulster County towns of Hurley, Saugerties, Rosendale, and Olive. On December 16, 2023, the arsenic filtration system at Hudson Valley System Number 5, located in the town of Olive, failed. This resulted in 29 homes being without safe drinking water. It was not until December 19, 2023, when an employee of the Public Utility Law Project contacted staff were we aware of the incident. Upon hearing of the interruption in potable water service, staff reached out to the Ulster County Department of Health, which confirmed that Hudson Valley experienced a failure of its arsenic filtration system and that 29 homes were without potable water. The New York State Department of Health approved the issuance of a do not drink order on December 16, 2023, which Hudson Valley was required to share with impacted customers. It should be noted that the department was not notified by the company of this service interruption, violating 16 NYCRR Section 503.3. Upon confirmation of the issuance of the do not drink order, which I'll note is much more serious than a boil water notice, staff began its investigation into the arsenic filtration system failure and stayed in regular contact with our partners at the Department of Health. On December 28, 2023, approximately 12 days after the do not drink order was issued, the department began to receive customer comments and complaints. 4 customers contacted the Office of Consumer Services, and 7 comments were filed online regarding this incident. This includes a letter signed by several local elected officials, and notably the Ulster County Commissioner of Health, dated January 9th, 2024, that expressed significant concerns about this system and more broadly Hudson Valley's operations of the system. Overall, commenters expressed frustration regarding the quality of service and lack of communication from Hudson Valley, alleged that Hudson Valley was not adhering to its own operational procedure and emergency plan, and claimed that the incident could have been avoided if Hudson Valley replaced an arsenic filter media weeks prior to the failure of the filtration system when the Department of Health made a recommendation to Hudson Valley that such action be taken. Some of the comments expressed concerns that staff had previously identified in a 2020 staff report issued in case 20W0477 on October 2, 2020. The 2020 staff report made 49 recommendations on how Hudson Valley can improve the quality of service it provides its customers. Therefore, staff augmented its investigation into the arsenic filter failure to include its ongoing evaluation of Hudson Valley's efforts to implement staff's 49 recommendations and whether Hudson Valley adhered to Commission directives since 2020. The outcome of the initial phase of staff's investigation is the 2024 staff report, which our next speaker, Josh, will elaborate upon.
Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. My name is Joshua Gagne. I'm a Utility Engineering Specialist 2 in the Office of Rates and Tariffs, and one of the staff assigned as lead to Item 401. The 2024 staff report touches upon how well Hudson Valley has addressed the 49 recommendations made in the 2020 staff report. Issues that were discussed in the Commission's last rate order for Hudson Valley, which was issued in May 19, 2023, in case 22W0357, as well as customer comments and complaints that have been filed since 2019. In addition to these historic and ongoing issues, the 2024 staff report explores the events surrounding and the ramifications of the arsenic filtration system failure, which represented a threat to public health and a higher level of concern for the operational and managerial capacities than historic administrative and operational issues raised. The 2024 staff report indicates that Hudson Valley and its owners, managers, and operators appear to have failed to make appreciable and consistent improvements to the billing, metering, management of waterworks, and customer service in accordance with recommendations made in the 2020 staff report and have failed to abide by Commission directives in Hudson Valley's most recent rate order. This 2024 staff report is based on information previously filed with the Secretary to the Commission and the Department. As staff continues its investigation, staff plans to determine if there is any evidence to support certain allegations that have been made against the owner, managers, and operators of Hudson Valley related to the arsenic filter failure and its actions since the issuance of the 2020 staff report. However, based on staff's current findings, it appears that the owner and certain managers and operators of Hudson Valley lack the managerial capability to properly operate the utility, ensure provision of safe and adequate service to Hudson Valley's customers. This concludes my overview of the 2024 staff report. At this time, Charles will provide further details of the proposed order.
Thank you, Josh. In order to ensure that Hudson Valley can provide safe and adequate service to its customers, the owner, manager, and/or operator of Hudson Valley must demonstrate technical, managerial, and financial capacities to operate a water utility. Based on the currently available facts that Tim and Josh have outlined, staff is concerned that Hudson Valley has failed to exercise due care and diligence in the maintenance, supervision, and operations of its water system. Public Service Law Section 112-A authorizes the Commission to appoint a temporary operator for a waterworks corporation with less than 1,000 customers, such as Hudson Valley. If the Commission determines that the Waterworks Corporation exhibits a failure to provide safe, adequate, or reliable service, a lack of technical, financial, or managerial capacity or ability to provide the service, or actual or effective abandonment of any service or portion thereof, the proposed order before you would commence a proceeding to consider appointing a temporary operator for Hudson Valley. Further, it would require Hudson Valley to answer to the allegations contained within the 2024 staff report and to show cause by March 1st, 2024, why the Commission should not find that the operation and management of the company does not exhibit one or more of the criteria established in Public Service Law Section 112-A, and why the Commission should not appoint a temporary operator for Hudson Valley. This concludes our overview of both the draft order and staff report. I would like to thank the department staff team members that are undertaking this investigation into Hudson Valley's service, operations, and practices, and who have prepared this staff report and draft order. We are now available to answer any questions the Commission may have.
Thank you, Charles, Tim, Josh. I want to start with one question. Please confirm that the situation is currently safe for the families affected by this problem.
Potable water service has been restored to these customers.
Thank you. I think that's the most important part, to just get that out of the way and make sure that's understood. This is an interesting one, and for your first, this is an very interesting one, Charles. And I want to start with just going through some of the facts of this case. You know, this particular matter involves a small water utility. They only serve a few hundred customers. I think you said 434 customers, to be exact.
Yes, approximately 434.
Right. So that's not 434 people, that's 434 customers. Could be very well thousands, if not more, affected by this. And there are many of these tiny water companies throughout the state. And, periodically we at the Commission have discussed the various challenges these small water companies face. And when you're a customer of one of these, you're grateful that there are government entities providing oversight and ensuring that the utility is complying with all the applicable laws and regulations, especially when that utility is providing the water that you and your family drink, bathe in, cook, and clean with. So I think this is a very significant matter to ensure that that can continue. So I want to commend you for working on this and for bringing us to this point in the investigation and starting this process. Second, I want to highlight that we do not take lightly what it means through the initiation of this proceeding, the proceeding to temporarily assign a temporary operator of a utility. But the alleged allegations, the alleged failures of the arsenic filter that occurred in December, coupled with the long history you've described of the company's history of poor service and managerial missteps, this is a serious matter, and it dictates serious action. Today's action is not the result of a single incident, but a culmination of issues. And upon learning of the problem in mid-December, staff immediately began this investigation. And I think that's an important thing to highlight. We didn't learn of this through the operator as we should. And can you clarify for me, when should the operator have informed us of this failure?
The operator or owner of the system is intended to notify the department whenever an interruption of service would have a duration of 4 hours or greater.
Right. So 4 hours plus another 72, we were then notified by a third party. I think you said the Public Utility Law Project?
Correct.
And that was our first notification of this.
Yes, that was staff's first notification.
Okay. So, but that wasn't the only notification. We also got letters. I think we received a number of letters around January 9th. We also received feedback from the Department of Health, a number of elected officials, and notably it's the Department of Health with jurisdiction of water quality in that area. Is that correct?
It's the county, but yes, that is correct.
Thank you. And so, one, I want to thank them for their cooperation in this investigation. But it's important to point out how this came to us. Now, I'd also like to highlight a third thing. We learned about the problems through Pulp on behalf of the customers, and again, not through the company. And in learning through this, we then determined the severity of it through the number of customers affected, the fact that this was not a boil water notice, but a do not drink water notice, something I think you pointed out was far more severe. Okay. So the severity of this was pretty significant. This is a fairly big issue overall. And then the fourth point, again, not an isolated issue. In the 2020 report, I think you identified 49 recommendations that resulting from that investigation from customer complaints for all aspects of the customer's operations, everything from billing, communication, operations. These are things that we've already informed the utility that they needed to take action on.
That is correct.
Okay. And then in our 2024 report that's included with this filing, we allege that the company did not move forward with many of these recommendations. That's the case, yes. Okay. So, given all the various issues here, I think it's important that we highlight, again, the significance of the actions that brought us to this point and our role in ensuring the safety and reliability of the system. It may be a small number of customers, but those customers rely on us to take these actions to ensure they get the water service they deserve. So, and as we work to do that, it's important to note that the company has rights as well. So this process through which we're engaging the company gives them an opportunity to respond to our queries and to test all of our allegations and to determine if additional actions are required. And so with that, I want to thank you for putting this together and bringing this before us, and I look forward to the various next steps needed before we make a final determination. Thank you. Commissioner Berman.
Thank you, and I do appreciate that the first issue you raised was making sure that the water was currently safe, and I think that's really important. So I appreciate that because that really underscores, the situation and our reality and what's most important. I was, and I will be voting for this item. I do recognize that it is the start of opening, bringing an order to show cause, and then having the company an opportunity to have the right due process and look at what we need to do. And it's focused on a temporary operator perhaps being assigned in this situation. I was struck that that Pope was, and first kudos to the Pope staffer who raised it and highlighted it. I think it shows the continuing ongoing work and diligence of the Pope employees who are really trying to make sure that they are responsive to the many things that come to them. The thing that I think I have really two sort of focuses. The first is that we do need to take a look at how is it that it was only because of Pope sort of helping us know that this was an issue. We had the 2020 staff report that highlighted some issues. We had the 2023 rate case that also highlighted this. So it's not that we didn't know that the company was a perhaps distressed small water company and had challenges. So how is it, and what can we do as we move forward in looking at this issue so that we have really more eyes on the ground that is helpful to making sure that these things don't get overlooked, because frankly it was a troubled company. So the fact that we were hoping that they would notify us, it's unlikely that would happen. So I'm just curious if you have any thoughts on that.
So if I may, my name is Mike Reeder. I'm the Director of Office of Rates and Tariffs. During the last rate case, we did an evaluation of the company's tariff, and in that tariff, and their customer outreach and notifications, also their billing systems. So we made adjustments to the billing of the utility to ensure that the customers have the opportunity and clearly see where they can issue complaints, and that would be to the PSC.
Okay. It doesn't really fully address, though, sort of what I'm sort of looking at, which is the bigger whole, right? Is that how, is it that, and really maybe this isn't necessarily needing to be drilled down here, but it is something to say, what was it that made someone reach out to Pulp rather than Endar us, right? We relied on our good partnership with Pulp to know that their calling us and flagging this issue was helpful. But what if they didn't realize that Pulp was maybe, they don't necessarily, someone might not necessarily know to call Pulp. And then for whatever reason, Pulp may not have thought to call, there's so many different layers here. And so I am just trying to address what I see as, when we know we have distressed companies with challenges, how are we more holistically looking? And I know we do a whole host of things, but making sure that this is just this is a one-off that's not going to happen again, right? Because we know that the company being required to call us when they are distressed and when they're not following other areas, it's not necessarily, we can't count on them to know to do the right thing or to do the right thing. And I see this as a sort of a flagging so that we're really focused on the safety of the water customers.
I can sort of slightly answer this. So when it comes to electric and gas, the commission is directly tied into the safety and welfare of the customers through our regulatory authority. That's not the case with water customers. The direct regulator really is the Department of the State Department of Health or the local Department of Health. So they were notified, immediately, and they participated in the no drink and boil. And I'm really speculating, but Pulp obviously would know that we also regulate the entity, and then therefore, contacted us likely because of our role in regulating water utilities.
I'm going to push back a little bit because I do think that is framing it perhaps not as, we may be speaking the same language, but I think that you're framing it as if we don't have a regulatory oversight over the safety of water, and we do. And so I want to be very clear that is, for us, important. And it is not just that we only have the safety aspects as it relates to electric and gas. We do have an obligation, and our mission is safety over all of them, including the water system. And yes, we have partnerships with DOH, and they have their own specific, they have their own specific regulations as it relates to the health of folks as related to water. But we are regulating this company, and that is very clear, especially as when we look to the rates. But for me, the bigger issue, and this gets to really what I see as a path forward, and I think we're all on the same page that the path forward is one that is really important. So the letter that we got from the executive, which is highlighted in the order, references a request that the commission utilize our authority under Public Service Law 89-H, as well as our commission acquisition incentive mechanism policy, the AIM policy, to transfer ownership of Hudson Valley to another entity that can provide reliable service to customers. That's a bread and butter that we have done over the years. I've been on the commission now, I'm in my 11th year, and we have had a whole host of transfers of small water companies to being acquired, whether it's to another larger private water company or to public company, a municipality. And we have actually had a number of different, I think, very successful transfers in looking at that. And we recognize, and the reason first of all, I was very glad to see that someone other than me remembers that we have the AIM policy. It actually references the 93, or actually it's the 94 policy. It was opened in 94. The 94 policy on acquisition incentive mechanisms for small water companies. What it is important for me, at least, to flag it from a historical perspective, but also the importance of it for a moving forward perspective, is in 2015, I was one of the commissioners who voted to commence a generic proceeding that was looking at, really frankly, changes that may or may not need to be made to the 1994 policy. And the order, and I think it's really important just to flag it, the order looked at that the 1994 AIM policy was established with the stated goals of improving the ability of small water companies to provide quality water service, customer service, and system management and operation, making compliance with current and future regulations easier, avoiding drastic rate increases, and bringing rates of merged companies into parity and promoting conservation. We, in 2015, opened this generic proceeding because we were looking at how to focus on promoting, as appropriate, the consolidation of smaller water utilities, both through traditional private acquisition and by facilitating transfers to public systems. One of the reasons we did that is that we recognize that it's reasonable to conclude that as smaller systems are acquired and removed from commission jurisdiction, those that remain, those small water companies that remain, are more likely to require, looking at perhaps incentives to help them in terms of merging, and that the smaller systems are often unable to raise sufficient capital to safely and properly operate the system in compliance with the Federal Safe Drinking Water Act. And therefore, it was really important for us in 2015, as we were realizing that there were still a large number of small water companies that were seeming to be distressed and seeming to have challenges, that the path forward needed for us to get really much more under the hood on what we were doing so that we did not continue to have small water companies that are safely operating and be able to do it from a managerial perspective should have the right to do that. But for those that we identify as having challenges, we need to be able to move swiftly before the issues arise. And in fact, at that time, we had seen from the 1994 policy, when we had the 1994 policy, we had 450 water companies. Of that number, from 1994 to 2015, it went down to 254 water companies. So my first question is, how many water companies do we currently have?
There are approximately 226 water companies.
Okay, so we went from 254 to 226, not a large dip. At the time when we instituted this generic proceeding in 2015, out of the 254 water companies, 130 of them, so more than half, but just about more than half, if my math is right, which I don't want Jeff to tell me I'm wrong, but around that, let's just say about half, were less than 50 customers. How many of the 226 are about less than less than 50 customers? And you may not know that right now, but.
I believe that figure is close to 100 water companies.
Okay, so it's interesting. We went from 254 to 226, and then we went from 130 to one. What did you say?
So just to clarify, so it's for number of customers under 100, it's 170 water companies that have less than 100.
Okay, and all right,
About
so
50,
we'll use that.
50 between 100 and 500, and just a handful over 500.
Okay, so it seems to me that the number that went down were pretty much then going from the smaller water companies were going away. That's what it looks like, right? So, but it's not a lot that went away. And so, and it's also not a lot when you look at the total number. It's not a lot, for us to say, wow, there's too many for us to be able to make sure that everyone's operating safely. And obviously, if that's the issue, we should be making sure we have the resources to do that. One of the things that is challenging and troubling to me is that I am always concerned when we open generic proceedings that we do not then, with good intentions, that we do not then do the follow-through in either making sure that we're meeting our intent and our mission in why we opened the generic proceeding, and then it gets lost, right? And then the generic proceeding either just, it seems they go dormant and we have no idea. In 2015, when we opened it, the last engagement on that proceeding itself was in 2016. And then it seemed to have fallen away in terms of people looking at it. There are a variety of reasons why, but it seems to me that we need to take a look at, is it something that the generic proceeding, which we currently have, is actually not necessarily addressing the very core issues that we need, because it was focused on whether we need to revise our incentive mechanisms. Right now, it's really much more of what the chair said, which is we need to make sure that the water companies that are operating, especially the small water guys, that we are seeing that there are challenges, and they will continue to have challenges as they age, that we need to actually look at what are we doing to make sure that we are helping them to manage their systems or to be properly acquired, and what does that look like, whether it's a big water company, a private water company, or whether it's a public municipality. And we should actually be engaging with the larger water companies and the municipalities on identifying those water companies, those small water companies that may need some help and some engagement in, is there anything here in terms of being able to be acquired before we wind up having the situation that we have now. Does any of that make sense? All right, so I'm just flagging 2015 order, which was trying to address reducing the number of small water companies to make sure we were addressing safety, to make sure that we were not having these situations, and that just loving that it was brought back, the 1994 policy that sort of triggered the 2015, maybe we need to do something different. And just reminding folks, we never actually addressed that generic proceeding. So, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Alisi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have no further comments, but I will be supporting this.
Thank you. Commissioner Howard.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I too really am concerned about the volume of these small companies and how we deal with them going forward. I suggest this actually is an issue that could also move beyond this commission to the legislature and how we deal with these things, because it's very clear that probably these small companies, many of them, will never be able to be completely viable at reasonable cost. I guess I'm jumping ahead a little about should this order to show cause go forward and it is determined we need a new operator. Can somebody explain to me the criteria by which we go through the selection process for a new operator?
So I could take this one. Again, it's Mike Reeder. So we look for a company that has history of providing water service, make sure they have the managerial, financial, and technical capabilities in order to provide service. We usually look towards our partners at municipalities that have current water districts, or we look to our partners at larger privately owned systems, like not New York American Water, Liberty Water Services, or Veolia Water.
Got you. So we are not, anyway, don't have our thumb on the scale one way or another where we go with a private operator or a municipal operator, right? It would never. Do we also look for like volunteers? Say,
so
who wants to do this?
Yes, unfortunately, yes. That's usually our first reach out is to municipalities. That would be our first reach out, and then we look for utilities that are willing to step up. And to their credit, both Liberty and Veolia have responded to my inquiries, and they have said because it is a health and safety issue that they would strongly consider stepping in and becoming a temporary operator.
Now, should the temporary operator be put in place and they identify capital costs that need to be done in order to provide adequate and safe service, are they sort of prejudged as to be prudent expenses already, or how do those get paid for? Or would we need another petition to increase a tariff or general rates to pay for these new capital costs?
We would need a new tariff or petition under the system that is being operated.
And would that be brought by the operator or the temporary the owner or the temporary operator?
The temporary operator would have all the access to all the books and records and have the jurisdiction over that company if we appoint one as a temporary operator.
And when we say temporary, how long is temporary?
That's a good question. Sometimes it's truly temporary, where it could last a year or so before they become acquired, or it could be, unfortunately, in some cases, a little bit longer than that.
Well, I would suggest in this particular case, there are many very viable and successful municipal water systems in Ulster County. Some are big, some are small. But the issue of ultimately fixing these problems, we've seen it probably will require some degree of municipal takeover. And I don't want to prejudge this particular case, but for these small companies writ large. And creating a new water district and a new finance is not an easy thing. And there is also the opportunity, there needs to be the transparency, is that just because this new water district or now a water district is created, that customers' costs will go down. That there is no direct relationship. But in the case like this, customers should potentially prepare for higher costs to fix any ongoing problems. Also, we have seen, while there have been some municipalities and areas where embracing public ownership has gone to fore, we've also seen the opposite. They look down the barrel at purchasing or moving ahead with municipalization, and it just doesn't occur. We went through this about 18 months ago right in this room. So how are we going forward with this? And I know that the issue of water infrastructure funding is currently under great debate in the legislature. I would just ask those in power that add this to your plate, because we can solve a singular issue, and I do believe that we've been extraordinarily rapid in our response here. But again, we should anticipate these before they happen. And also to develop I think to go to Commissioner Berman's point, a mechanism by which customers know if something bad happens, call us up, and that also is true for, elected officials. But again, in this case, I think I would hope that we would come away with municipal operators for these one or more of these parts of this system, and again, maybe it's time to revisit the entire small water system universe with an eye toward what it would take to eliminate these problems. Just we need to remember how most of them were done. They came up, developer came, wanted to build a subdivision or something, and then the way to get the water to everybody is that developer takes on the role of a utility. In many cases, that goes on many, many decades ago, and that developer really never wanted to be in the water business to begin with. So again, on a going forward basis, I am a strong believer in municipal water systems, and quite honestly, in New York, we are hugely blessed by having the vast majority of water customers in this state on municipal systems. That is not true across the map of the United States, and again, I think there is room for short-term improvement, but again, we need a long-term strategy on how to deal with this. But thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Valesky.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, I want to just complete Commissioner Howard's loop of questioning, Mike, if you could, in terms of a potential selection of a temporary operator. The ultimate decision would be the result of a recommendation from staff that would come back to the commission at some point in the future for a subsequent vote. Is that correct? By the commission itself?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. So it seems to me in this case that the failure of the arsenic filter system almost served as a last straw, if you will, in terms of your recommendation to seek an order to show cause from the commission. My question is, and doing some research on this issue and going back to the 2020 order, obviously, as other commissioners have indicated, this is not the first time that there have been problems. There have been recommendations made, some, my understanding, followed, some not. So the question that I have, and perhaps it's more for counsel, Mike, than you, but the decision to seek an order to show cause in a matter like this, is it a statutory trigger, or is it a subjective decision on the part of staff to ask for an order to show cause? The reason why I'm asking the question, could an argument be made that something between 2020 and the arsenic filter system failure could or should have triggered an order to show cause before this point? So again, the question is there something in statute that leads you to take this recommendation, or is it a subjective decision?
I would frame it as a subjective decision. I would instead frame it as a discretionary decision on behalf of the commission. We have obviously very strong statutory authority, and pursuant to regulations and commission process, the order to show cause is the proper mechanism in which to review. It's similar to like a civil court complaint and a motion for a preliminary injunction. It's a sort of a combination of the two. And here the motion is that we're asking the operator of this facility, based on your history and based on this most recent pretty catastrophic failure at part of the system, should you do you have the wherewithal to continue operating the system, or should we provide a temporary operator?
Sorry to interrupt. I just want to make sure. You said you would not frame it as a subjective decision. I didn't hear that part. I just wanted to make sure that's what you meant.
Ultimately, it's the commission's discretionary decision, and that's what it is. It's in front of you. We've provided the basis to issue the order, but it ultimately is your discretionary decision.
Okay, I think again with a situation like this going forward, should a similar situation occur, where is the trigger? I guess is what I'm really getting at. At what point is management potentially so serious on behalf of its customers that we're at a point that we ought to seek in order to show cause? Just some thought put to that going forward, so that there's a roadmap to follow, I guess is what I'm getting at.
Let me just say that I think it's always going to be a very fact-specific determination. What the record shows here is there are definitely issues, historical issues regarding financial capability of the company with respect to the operational and definitely customer complaint process. Certainly has been problematic over the years. Those are different in kind than the failure of an arsenic filtration system.
Sure. Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that. My only final comment, really, again, following up on Commissioner Berman initially laid out, and Commissioner Howard followed up as well. I just think, and I guess I'll address my thought to you directly, Chair, and your leadership. I think this is certainly an example of something that I would be very supportive of, revisiting that generic proceeding and looking further at this entire issue. And as Commissioner Berman indicated, it's entirely possible that other branches of government may want to look at this as well in terms of legislative issues. So I offer that as a suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Majori.
Thank you. I don't actually have any additional questions. I will like to acknowledge that this is a very concerning matter, and I will be supporting this order. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll do a call for a vote. My vote is in favor of the recommendation to institute a proceeding and direct Hudson Valley Water Companies to show cause as discussed. Commissioner Berman, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Alisi?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Howard?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Valesky?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Majori?
Yes.
Thank you. The item is approved and the recommendations are adopted. Thank you, staff. And with that, we'll now move to the consent agenda. Do any commissioners wish to comment on or recuse from voting on any items on today's consent agenda? I'll begin with Commissioner Berman.
Yes, I just want to make some brief comments on item 562. It's the petition of Empire City Subway Company for an order requiring optical communication groups to notify its customers of a potential loss of service. This is really an item that's been related to and is really about significant contract money disputes among Empire City's Subway, Verizon, and OCG. My concern here is that, and I really first of all want to sort of say kudos to staff, who I know this isn't the first time this item like this has come before us, and I think the staff has been working really hard at trying not to get involved in the contract dispute, but resolving the jurisdictional issues that are appropriate for us to resolve. However, it's been rather difficult, and I think it continues to be a challenge in terms of addressing that. We recently had a similar order in April of 2023, a different case number, but same parties related to this. And it gets again to, what are we doing and how do we send the message about following the proper notification, but also knowing that the resolution of the contract and money dispute continues to be a challenge and is a little bit outside of our jurisdictional issue. I'm voting no for a very specific reason, which is that we got preliminary agenda went out on Friday, and that's really the first opportunity for parties to see, what may or may not be on the agenda. Now, it shouldn't be a opportunity for parties to say, "Oh wait, that's on the agenda. We don't want that in to say pull it or not pull it, right? But if there are legitimate reasons, and I think that when we see when the counsel to a party who, appears before us routinely and says, we'd like you to not have this on, and formally, because a lot of times I think these conversations may happen not formally puts in the file a request to move it because they are working with their client trying to resolve the money issue, and the very issues that are just back and forth disputed, it is important to that contract dispute negotiations and the money. And so moving it from one session to the next session and offering to have formal notification of exactly what they did before the March session, I think it requires us to take a look and say, here we have, and it's new counsel, here we have new counsel who is trying to be openly suggesting what may be helpful to resolve some of the money issues. I'm sure there's still going to be some money issues that are outside our jurisdiction, but we really would like the opportunity to not have this on the session because it may not be helpful to the ultimate resolution, and we are trying to resolve it in time for the March session, or at least resolve aspects of it. For us to just say, sorry, no good, no, we're going to keep it on February, when the movement from February to March does not show that they would have significant harm. Yes, customers would not be notified in a timely fashion, but they haven't been notified in a timely fashion on other things. And the February to March movement, I don't think is a problem. And therefore, I also think it's an internal process that we need to have a better handle on us as commissioners being able to kind of weigh in on what, how our comfort level is on that, rather than being told at the 11th hour, no, we're denying this request. And so for that, I am a no on this, but I also want to be clear that it is not now to invite more letters like this, or more opportunities for folks to say they want to switch and move things, from the February session or the March session to, March 2025. And I don't think that's what this is, and I have faith that this really is trying to address the underlying issues. So I'm a no. Thank you.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you. Commissioner Elisa?
I'll have no comments or observations. I'll be supporting the entire consent agenda.
Thank you. Commissioner Howard?
I'll be supporting the agenda.
Thank you. Commissioner Valesky?
No comments on any items.
Thank you. And Commissioner Majori?
Thank you. I'll be supporting the agenda. I do want to make a quick comment on one item, which is item 375, 23E0159, which is a minor rate filing pertaining to the village of Churchville. And I just, when I see these minor filings, I look to see if there's any public comments, and there weren't here, as is often the case. This is actually not, it's not a rate case per se. It is a petition for rehearing to correct some errors in the rate case from September. And the result of this will be a base rate increase. And it just strikes me that there weren't any public comments, as is often the case with these small rate cases. I look at these to see if the company, in this case the village, informed the ratepayers before this reached us, and there was the opportunity for public comment, and I'm satisfied that there was. But I just, it strikes me that the first two items on the regular agenda reflected a lot of public input in different ways, and there is the opportunity to provide feedback and to shape the outcome before it reaches us. In the absence of anything in the record to suggest that we should vote no on this, I'm going to vote yes. But again, the reason I'm highlighting it is even in the small rate cases, there is the opportunity for public input. That's my only comment. Thank you very much. I'll be voting yes on the entire agenda.
Thank you. I'll now do a call for a vote. My vote is in favor of the recommendations on the consent agenda. Commissioner Berman, how do you vote?
I vote yes, except for 562. I'm a no.
Thank you. Commissioner Elisi?
I vote yes on all items.
Commissioner Howard?
Yes on all items.
Commissioner Valesky?
Yes on all items.
Commissioner Majori?
Yes on all items.
Thank you. The items are approved and the recommendations are adopted. Madam Secretary, is there anything further to come before us today?
No, there is not.
Thank you. And with that, I adjourn. Thank you.